Hello, my name is Jonathan Gardner, and I lead client services at Nelson Mullins. Welcome to our Legal Lens podcast, where we share monthly insights and perspectives from our industries and practices. Today, I am joined by Matthew Lindenbaum. Matthew leads or co-leads our securities practice. And Matthew, thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you, Jonathan. Happy to be here.
So we're really here to talk about the fintech industry, Matthew, and I really want to understand, how is fintech transforming the environment, the world, and the society we live in from a personal and a societal perspective?
Well, thank you, Jonathan. It's a very important question. One way I like to think of how fintech is transforming the world is to use an analogy to right now it's 2025. We rewind the clock 25 years. We're in the year 2000. And as we remember, those of us are around back then, and whether either in the industry or just those who experienced that time, everything felt like it was being upended by the new dot-com innovations, the World Wide Web, the internet, and it seemed that everything in our daily lives was being touched in some way, in some new way, by the internet, by dot-com businesses. Now, 25 years later, a lot of those dot-com businesses that might have been running a Super Bowl ad in the year 2000 or 2001 might not be here. But today, 25 years later, it's undoubtedly the case that all of us are touched by and affected by the internet. That's in fact how you and me are communicating right now. And so fintech, financial technology, basically has the same promise as the dot-com revolution, which is, if we have a follow-up talk about this, Jonathan, in the year 2050, 25 years from now, we might be looking back and seeing how just like dot-com changed industry, everyday life, government regulation, so has financial technology. Just to take some obvious examples, if you are paying your bills, online today or on your phone or on your app, you're using financial technology. If you are investing in a digital asset, if you're buying a fraction of Bitcoin, you are interacting with financial technology. If it's changing the way that you interact with money and with the financial industry, you are interacting with financial technology. So, to take an example, if we were back maybe 15 years ago, not even the 25 years ago, you're probably much more likely to be spending more of your time going to the bank, dealing with a bank teller. Maybe you're walking into a big room with marble on the floor and a big impressive vault, showing the strength and stability of this bank. We don't do that anymore. Now, we have an app, we might have a payment app, our bank account app. We might be paying for something with a digital asset. It's a different relationship to money in the financial system, and it's constantly innovating. It increases the speed of financial transactions. It increases the some would say the security or the anonymity of financial transactions, but it changes our relationship to money. To take another example, if you were to be, buying a house in 2025 versus, even 2020, you're probably writing a check for a down payment or a closing payment. These days, that's not the case. You're probably doing a financial technology enabled transaction either on your phone or on your computer. And so that would be a small example, but one of many of how financial technologies is changing our world.
Right. I mean, I can't remember the last time as an individual consumer that I actually had cash in my wallet.
That's right.
I mean, obviously credit cards and debit cards now, it's Apple Pay, and so it's definitely moving along. So in this new world order, this new world environment with fintech, from a governmental and a regulatory body perspective, how are we putting, controls and how are those controls shaping this new industry?
So that's a great question, Jonathan, because the government role in regulating fintech has had a tremendous influence on the industry itself. And in particular, the changing role of government regulation. So right now, we are at what's kind of a pretty exciting or terrifying, depending on your perspective, inflection point where the regulation of the fintech industry is pivoting with this new administration. So the Trump administration 1.0 was actually pretty similar to both how the prior Obama administration and then the subsequent Biden administration treated financial technology, which was with some degree of skepticism and with kind of a heavier hand of regulation and enforcement. What's clear now, at least in these first few months of the Trump 2.0 administration, is that a very different approach is being taken. So one of the key regulatory approaches of the federal government toward financial technology was to treat many of the new financial technology products as securities or potential securities. And if a product is or an investment is a security, that subjects that investment to a substantially greater amount of federal oversight requirements, boxes you have to check, things you have to do, reasons why you have to hire lawyers, if something is a security versus not a security. And the assumption going back, 10 years or more is that many of these financial technology products or devices, whether it's a digital asset or a sort of digital investment account, is that they are securities. And so now in Trump administration 2.0, it's very clear that the Securities and Exchange Commission is not taking that view anymore. And you've seen the dismissal or the curtailment of a lot of enforcement actions and litigation, and the clear directive that going forward, they're not going to be focusing on that. They're not going to be trying to bring financial technology within, within that securities regulation framework. Instead, they are going to be focusing on the bad actors, the fraudsters, those who are just kind of engaging in garden variety fraud or bad actions to defraud investors and the general public. So that's a big change. But any part of financial technology that touches consumers and citizens is still going to come under some type of government scrutiny. So there are antitrust investigations into different players in the in the ecosystem, be it Apple, or Visa, because all of those big companies have gotten in on financial technology, whether it's using Apple Pay, like you mentioned, Jonathan, or other apps. And what that makes me think of, and how the federal regulation is driving things, is if you take my year 2000 example again, if you're to rewind the tape, let's go back to 2000. If you're going online, you might be using Netscape, for example, or AOL. And if you were betting on what's going to be the search engine of the future, you would bet Netscape. There is this pesky little new search engine called Google that most of us probably weren't using in 1999 or year 2000, and maybe you wouldn't have bet on it at the time. And so I think of that right now, what could be the Google of financial technology or some aspect of financial technology, we may not know even what it is at this point. Maybe it's Apple Pay for part of it, but just as likely it's going to be something else, or something that some people have heard of, but many haven't.
Right. Matthew, one thing that we haven't talked about is artificial intelligence, and how artificial intelligence is impacting this new evolving industry. Do you have any thoughts or comments on that?
Yeah, so AI is, I think of it as almost like adjacent to financial technology, in that it's a new, although not so new, because AI has permeated our world, really for decades at this point. But it's an area that's increasingly embedding itself in what we do, how we do things. And so AI capabilities are tied into some of the same technology that financial technology is tied into. And I'll give you an example, Jonathan. So one of the areas that I practice in, and that has a good amount of my practice attention these days, is the realm of Bitcoin mining. And Bitcoin mining is a good example of how financial technology is impacting our world in the background in ways that we might not even be aware of. So Bitcoin is the most prominent digital asset out there. It's the one that people know the most. It's got the greatest value, the greatest attention. And incidentally, it's the one that the Securities and Exchange Commission years ago said is not a security. So it's had a little bit of protection from that federal regulation. Anyway, the way that one obtains Bitcoin, other than going out and trading it or buying it, is to mine it. And so, what does that mean? To mine Bitcoin is to get a computer, or these days, thousands of computers, and have them solve algorithmic equations that has the effect, once it solves the equation, of identifying, so to speak, the Bitcoin. So if you're thinking of like mining coal or gold or drilling for oil, it's sort of the same process, but taking place in the internet. And instead of having drills or tools like that, your tools are dedicated Bitcoin servers or miners, which are computers. They are hooked up to power and to the internet, but at scale. So you hook them up 2,000, 4,000, 8,000 in one location, which obviously takes a tremendous amount of power, and you have them run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, searching for Bitcoin, mining it, so to speak. So that's set up in data centers, and those data centers, the other use of data centers, just like these Bitcoin mining data centers, is for AI. And so other companies are setting up this same sort of operation, but instead of mining Bitcoin, to do AI type technology. And so both of those are competing for the same resources, in this case, among other things, power. And to take as an example, Bitcoin mining, I think in the year 2024, last year, consumed something like 2.5% of all power consumption in the United States. AI is right behind and only increasing that kind of thirst for power to run, whether it's the AI, chips in AI servers or Bitcoin or other digital asset mining servers. That's now become a substantial part of both the United States and the world economy, but it's all happening in the background, right? These data centers, they're not going to be in, downtown Atlanta or Boston. They're going to be, somewhere, pretty rural where there aren't that many people, and where power is a little less expensive than in a metropolitan area, where it can be done somewhat, somewhat out of sight, and without creating any, trouble for neighbors. Yeah.
Right. Interesting. Well, every time I talk with you, I learn something, and thank you for sharing your insights, your perspectives in this very fluid marketplace. We look forward to staying in touch with you as more clarity comes and the market moves. So thank you for joining. To our audience, we hope you enjoyed and found this valuable. Thank you for joining Legal Lens, and everybody have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.